For 3 years, Adrian Cole had looked at every woman the same way, until the night he looked at me. I didn't know that when I walked into the Beaumont Hotel carrying a silver tray and worrying about whether my car would survive another Chicago winter. I was 27, working weekend events to help cover rent while finishing my certification in occupational therapy, and men like Adrian Cole existed in a universe so far above mine that I had no reason to learn their names. The ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers. Champagne glasses chimed. A string quartet played softly beneath conversations about investments, charities, and vacation homes. Then I noticed the silence around one table. For men in dark suits sat there, but everyone seemed to orbit the man in the center. Adrian, 34, black suit, white shirt, no tie, calm gray eyes that never seemed to move without purpose. I learned later that people had been whispering about him for 3 years. Adrian could buy almost anything, command almost anyone, yet he had refused every romantic invitation that came his way. No dates, no relationships, no woman allowed close enough to become personal. Some called it discipline. Others called it grief. That night, none of it mattered to me. I had 6 champagne flutes balanced on one hand when I heard a sharp voice behind me. A wealthy guest was berating Emily, a 19-year-old server on her first shift, because she'd brought sparkling water instead of still. Emily's face turned red. Her hands shook. Nobody intervened. I set down my tray. "Sir," she offered to replace it. He stared at me. "Did I ask you?" "No," I kept my voice calm. But embarrassing her won't change what's in the bottle. The room near us seemed to shrink. Emily stared at me like I'd lost my mind. The guest muttered something and turned away. I picked up my tray, thinking that was the end of it. Then I felt someone watching me. I looked across the ballroom. Adrian Cole was staring directly at me. Not smiling, not flirting, just watching with an intensity that made every sound around me fade for one strange second. I held his gaze because looking away felt dishonest. Then I turned and went back to work. What I didn't know was that Adrian had spent 3 years teaching himself never to want anyone close. And somehow, without touching him, speaking to him, or even knowing his name, I had just broken the first rule he thought would last forever. I should have forgotten him the moment I turned away. Instead, I felt Adrian Cole's attention follow me across the ballroom like a quiet change in temperature. I kept working. Refill the champagne. Clear the empty glasses. Smile when spoken to. Pretend the most intimidating man in the room had not been watching me for the last 10 minutes. "Claire." Emily caught my arm near the service station. "Do you know who that is?" I glanced toward Adrian's table. "Someone who paid too much for a suit?" Her eyes widened. "Adrian Cole." The name meant nothing to me. Apparently, my face made that obvious. Emily leaned closer. "People here are afraid of him." I looked again. Adrian was speaking quietly to an older man, and somehow the older man seemed to be doing all the listening. "Then people here should find better hobbies." Emily almost laughed. I carried another tray toward the ballroom. Halfway there, Adrian stepped into my path. Up close, he seemed taller than I had realized, easily over 6 feet, but it was his stillness that unsettled me. Everyone else at the gala performed well. Adrian did not have to perform anything. "You defended her," he said. "No introduction. No greeting. She needed someone to. You could have lost your job. Then I would have found another one." Something changed behind his gray eyes. "What is your name? Do you always expect strangers to answer you?" For 1 second, absolute silence. Then the corner of his mouth moved. "Barely. Usually." "That sounds exhausting." I stepped around him. "Enjoy the gala." "Wait." I stopped and looked back. Adrian seemed almost surprised that he had said it. "I did not catch your name." "That is because I did not give it to you." Then I walked away. My heart was beating faster than I wanted to admit, but I refused to look back. At the service station, Emily stared at me as if I had just declined an invitation from the president. "What did he want?" "My name." "And?" "I kept it." She shook her head. "Claire Bennett, you have absolutely no survival instinct." I smiled and reached for another tray. Across the ballroom, Adrian had returned to his table, but his attention had not returned with him. I could feel it. What I could not know was how unfamiliar that feeling was for him. Adrian was accustomed to people approaching, agreeing, staying. I had done none of those things. I had simply walked away. And for a man who could command almost any room he entered, being irrelevant to one ordinary woman was apparently impossible to ignore. The night should have ended with me stacking empty glasses and catching the last train home. Instead, 20 minutes before midnight, I heard Adrian Cole's name spoken behind a closed service door. I was carrying a tray toward the private lounge when two men stepped into the hallway ahead of me. Both wore dark suits and event badges, so I assumed they belonged there. Then one lowered his voice. Cole leaves through the east entrance at 12:15. I slowed without meaning to. The other man glanced toward the ballroom. And Daniel Mercer has everything arranged? Mercer promised Cole will not leave this building tonight on his own terms. My stomach tightened. Maybe I had misunderstood. Wealthy people spoke dramatically about business all the time, but their voices were too careful, too deliberate. I backed away before they noticed me, nearly colliding with a card of clean glassware. My first instinct was simple. Stay out of it. I had rent due Monday, class at 8 in the morning, and exactly zero interest in becoming involved with Adrian Cole. Then I remembered Emily trembling while everyone watched. Doing nothing had bothered me then. It bothered me more now. I found Adrian near the west corridor, speaking with a silver-haired man. Mr. Cole. His gray eyes moved immediately to mine. So you learned my name? Unfortunately. The silver-haired man looked offended. Adrian almost smiled. Give us a moment. When we were alone, I lowered my voice. Two men near the private lounge were talking about you. They mentioned the east entrance, 12:15, and someone named Daniel Mercer. The warmth disappeared from Adrian's expression. Exactly what did they say? I repeated every word. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he glanced at his watch, then toward a man standing near the ballroom doors. One subtle nod passed between them. Nothing dramatic happened. That somehow frightened me more. Claire Bennett, Adrian said quietly. I froze. How do you know my name? Your friend said it loudly enough. Of course she did. His eyes stayed on mine. Why warn me? Because it sounded serious. That is not what I asked. He stepped closer, stopping several feet away. You barely know me. Why risk involving yourself? I thought about it. The answer came easier than expected. I did not do it for you. His expression shifted. Then why? Because if I believed someone was in danger and walked away when I could have warned them, I would have to live with that choice. I am not willing to become that person. For the first time that night, Adrian Cole had no immediate reply. Then a man approached and whispered something to him. Adrian's gaze hardened. The east entrance is compromised. My breath caught. He looked back at me. And now, Claire, whoever planned this may realize you heard them. You are telling me I am in danger because I overheard a conversation while carrying champagne? I asked. Adrian did not blink. I am telling you I do not know what they saw. Around us, the gala continued as if nothing had changed. Music drifted through the ballroom. Glasses chimed. Someone laughed near the bar. I suddenly hated how normal everything sounded. I can go home. No, the word came too quickly. I folded my arms. That was not a request for permission. Something almost amused flickered across his face, then vanished. Claire, until I know who Daniel Mercer is working with, your apartment is the first place I would expect someone to look. You do not even know where I live. Adrian held my gaze. I can know in 5 minutes. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in the back of a black SUV with Chicago sliding past the tinted windows. Adrian sat across from me, calm enough to make my anxiety feel unreasonable. Where are we going? A secure house near Lake Forest. For how long? Until I have answers. I shook my head. Then we need rules. That got his attention. Rules. 3. Adrian leaned back. Go ahead. First, you do not touch me unless I agree. Second, you do not make decisions about my future because you think you know better. Third, you do not give me money, expensive gifts, or anything designed to make me owe you. Silence filled the SUV. The man beside Adrian stared straight ahead with impressive discipline. You are giving me conditions, Adrian finally said. Yes. While I am protecting you. Protection does not erase boundaries. His eyes stayed on mine for several long seconds. Agreed. I had expected an argument. Somehow, his acceptance unsettled me more. The house appeared 40 minutes later behind iron gates and tall trees, all pale stone and warm windows overlooking the dark water beyond. Inside, everything was quiet. Too perfect. A woman named Margaret showed me a guest room larger than my entire apartment. Fresh clothes were already waiting on the bed. I turned toward Adrian. Rule 3. They are clothes, Claire. They are expensive clothes. He exhaled slowly. What would you prefer? A toothbrush, a clean t-shirt, and something comfortable that does not cost more than my monthly rent. For the first time, I saw Adrian Cole genuinely laugh. It was brief, almost rusty, as if the sound had not been used in years. Then he caught himself. The silence returned. But something had changed. At my door, his hand lifted toward the frame, then stopped before crossing the threshold. "You are safe here," he said. "Good night, Claire." He remained outside. He had remembered the first rule. And that was when I realized the dangerous thing about Adrian was not that he expected control. It was how quickly he was learning to give some of it back. I woke before sunrise to the smell of coffee and the uncomfortable realization that I had slept better in Adrian Cole's guarded house than I had in my own apartment for months. Downstairs, pale morning light stretched across the kitchen windows. Adrian stood at the counter in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, reading something on his phone. He looked up when I entered. "Coffee? That depends. Is accepting coffee a violation of Rule 3? His mouth almost curved. "I believe coffee falls below the bribery threshold." I poured myself a cup. "Then we are making progress." For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The quiet should have been awkward. It was not. Then I noticed a framed photograph on a shelf beside the fireplace. Adrian stood beside a younger man and a blonde woman, all three smiling beneath summer sunlight. Adrian followed my gaze. The warmth disappeared from his face. "Who is she?" I asked. "Someone from a long time ago." His answer closed the subject more effectively than a locked door. Later that morning, Margaret found me in the library and mentioned, almost accidentally, that Adrian had not brought a woman into his private life in 3 years. 3 years. The photograph returned to my mind. Suddenly, his distance made sense in the simplest possible way. He was still carrying someone else. I told myself that was none of my business. Then I started keeping more distance anyway. Adrian noticed by lunch. Of course he did. "You have been avoiding me." "I have been reading." "You moved to the other side of the room when I entered." I closed my book. "Maybe I like that chair." His gray eyes narrowed slightly. "Claire." "Adrian." Before he could continue, his phone rang. He listened without speaking, and something in his expression changed. A pause. "Who else knows?" He ended the call and stared toward the windows. "What happened?" I asked. "Nothing you need to worry about." "That sounds suspiciously like you making decisions for me." He looked at me, caught by his own promise. "Someone asked about you this morning." My fingers tightened around the book. "Who?" "We do not know yet." "Why would anyone care about me?" Adrian's voice lowered. "Because you warned me." He hesitated. "And because people saw me leave the Beaumont with you." The room suddenly felt colder. "So they think I matter to you." Adrian said nothing. That silence answered too much. I stood. "Do I?" His eyes met mine, but before he could respond, a man appeared at the library door. "Mr. Cole, we found out who made the inquiry." Adrian's expression hardened. "Daniel Mercer?" The man shook his head. "No, someone closer." Adrian went completely still. Then he looked at me with something I had not seen before. Not control, not curiosity, fear. And in that moment, I understood the real danger was no longer that Adrian Cole had noticed me. It was that someone else had noticed he had. Adrian did not tell me who the man was until we were inside his study with the door closed. "Michael Grant," he said. "He has worked with me for 11 years. I watched him stand beside the window, one hand resting against the glass. And he was asking about me? Your apartment, your job, your schedule." A chill moved through me. Then I should leave Chicago for a few days. Adrian turned immediately. No, there it was again. That single word. That instinct to decide. I stared at him until he realized it too. His jaw tightened. "I am asking you to stay here until I understand what Michael wants." "Better." He almost smiled, but his phone buzzed before either of us could say more. An hour later, Adrian received information that Michael wanted to meet at an office near the river. Adrian planned to go. I planned to stay. Then Margaret brought me an envelope delivered with the morning mail. Inside was a note claiming Emily had been questioned about me and asking me to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. I believed it for exactly 30 seconds. Long enough to panic. Long enough to insist on going. Adrian studied the note and said quietly, "It is a trap." "How do you know?" "Emily does not have this address." I felt foolish. Adrian did not make me feel foolish. That mattered. He simply moved the note away from me and began making calls. By afternoon, we learned Emily was perfectly safe and had sent nothing. Someone had wanted me outside the house. Adrian became colder with every new detail. By evening, Michael had been identified as the person who arranged the message. Adrian stood in the study, giving instructions in a voice so controlled it frightened me more than shouting would have. I waited until everyone else left. What are you going to do? Make certain he never interferes with your life again. What does that mean? Claire. No. Tell me. His eyes hardened. He used you to get to me. And if you answer that by becoming someone I cannot recognize, then he still gets what he wanted. Adrian stared at me. You do not understand my world. Maybe not, but I understand choices. I stepped closer, stopping well beyond arm's reach. If protecting me requires you to become a monster, then you are not protecting me. Silence. Heavy. Endless. Adrian looked toward the desk, where his phone waited beside the photograph I had noticed earlier. His hand reached for it, then stopped. He closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the anger was still there, but something else had taken control of it. Michael will be removed from every business connected to me, he said. Legally. Permanently. Nothing more. I released a breath I had not realized I was holding. Adrian looked at me as though I had done something impossible. 3 years, he whispered. What? His gaze shifted to the photograph. 3 years ago, I made a promise because of the woman in that picture. He paused. And you deserve to know what that promise was. Adrian picked up the photograph, but did not look at me. Her name was Rebecca Hale. His voice had changed. The authority was gone, leaving something quieter underneath. She was my brother Ethan's fiancée. I had assumed the woman in the photograph belonged to Adrian. Somehow, learning that she had not made the sadness in his face harder to understand. Ethan was the person I trusted most, he continued. Rebecca was family long before they were supposed to marry. His thumb moved across the edge of the frame. 3 years ago, someone wanted leverage over me. They believed Rebecca mattered to me personally. They were right about the part that mattered. She was family. He stopped. The silence stretched between us. What happened? I asked softly. Adrian set the photograph down. She was caught in consequences that belonged to my world, not hers. She survived, but she left Chicago. Ethan went with her. I have not blamed either of them for choosing a life far away from me. His eyes finally met mine. I blamed myself. Suddenly, the empty house made sense. The distance. The rules he had created before I ever gave him mine. So you decided nobody could get close again. I decided no woman would ever become a target because someone believed she mattered to me. For 3 years. He nodded once. No dates. No relationships. No exceptions. I thought about the gala. His stare across the ballroom. The way he had followed me with his eyes after I walked away. And then I showed up. Adrian gave a humorless smile. Then you showed up. That sounds inconvenient. This time, he actually laughed, but it faded quickly. You have no idea. I moved toward the window, watching the lights reflect across the dark lake. Adrian, keeping everyone away is not the same as keeping them safe. It worked until you. No. It kept you alone until me. He went still. I turned toward him. You are not afraid of wanting someone in your life. You are afraid of what it means if they matter. There is no difference in my world. Then change your world. His expression tightened. You say that like it is simple. I did not say simple. I said possible. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Adrian stepped closer and stopped several feet away, exactly where my boundary remained. Claire, I do not know how to do this. It was the most vulnerable thing I had heard him say. Then start by not deciding for me. He nodded slowly. All right. His phone rang on the desk. Adrian answered, listened, and looked directly at me. Michael has agreed to cooperate. Daniel Mercer was behind everything. He ended the call. It is over. I should have felt relieved. Instead, my heart sank, because if the danger was over, there was nothing left keeping me in Adrian Cole's house except the one thing neither of us had been brave enough to name. The strange thing about freedom is that sometimes it hurts more than being told to stay. The next morning, my borrowed t-shirt and jeans were folded inside the small, overnight bag Margaret had found for me, and my own black work uniform rested on top, like evidence from another life. Adrian stood near the front windows while a gray Chicago sky pressed against the lake beyond him. Your apartment has been checked, he said. Your employer knows you had a family emergency. Emily is safe. Daniel Mercer cannot interfere with you again, and Michael is no longer connected to my businesses. So I can go home. Adrian was silent for half a second too long. Yes. I should have been relieved. Instead, something inside me tightened. That is it. His gray eyes found mine. What do you want me to say? I almost laughed because 3 days earlier I would have given anything to hear him admit that I was free to leave. Now I wanted something I had no right to demand. I do not know. Adrian crossed the room, then stopped several feet away. Always the distance I had asked for. Always the boundary he had learned faster than I expected. I know what I want to say, he said quietly. I want to ask you to stay. My breath caught. Then ask. Stay. One word. No command behind it this time. Just hope. I looked at the man who had spent 3 years building walls around himself and realized staying now would be too easy. I cannot. Pain crossed his face before discipline erased it. Why? Because I need to know whether you actually learned to let someone choose you, or whether you simply learned a kinder way to keep them. Adrian looked away. That is fair. I care about you. Saying it aloud made my chest ache. That is exactly why I have to leave. He could have offered money, protection, a better apartment, a driver waiting outside every morning. He could have made ordinary life feel impossible without him. Instead, Adrian reached for my bag and carried it to the front door. He set it beside me. Then go, Claire. His voice was quiet. No conditions. No one will follow you. If you never come back, I will respect that. I searched his face. You mean that? I have to. He opened the door. Cold morning air rushed inside. I stepped across the threshold, then turned back. Adrian remained where I had left him. He did not reach for me. He did not call my name. He simply let me choose. And as the car carried me toward Chicago, I finally understood what had changed. The first night we met, Adrian Cole had enough power to keep almost anyone near him. That morning, he proved he had enough strength to let the one person he wanted walk away. 3 weeks passed before I saw Adrian again. I returned to classes, weekend shifts, grocery lists, crowded trains, and the familiar radiator in my apartment that clanked every morning at 6. Everything was normal. That was the problem. Adrian never called. No flowers appeared at my door. No black SUV waited outside my building. Nobody quietly checked whether I had made it home. He had promised to let me choose, and he kept that promise so completely that some nights I almost hated him for it. Emily asked about him once. I told her there was nothing to tell. The lie tasted strange. Then Margaret called on a Thursday afternoon. She did not ask me to return. She only thanked me. Adrian had changed, she said. He listened more. He had stepped away from business relationships built on fear and replaced them with legitimate partnerships. He had even called Ethan and Rebecca for the first time in nearly a year. He is trying, Margaret said. That evening, rain tapped softly against my apartment window. I stared at my phone for almost an hour before finally putting on my coat. The drive to Lake Forest took 40 minutes. Every mile gave me another chance to turn around. I did not. Adrian opened the door himself. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. He looked exactly as I remembered him, except something in his face seemed lighter. Claire. My name sounded almost like a question. Hi. His eyes moved past me toward the empty driveway. Did something happen? No. Are you in trouble? No. Confusion replaced concern. Then why are you here? I looked past him into the house that had once felt like a beautiful prison and now looked strangely like somewhere I had missed. Because you finally gave me a choice. Adrian went still. And I smiled. I am making it. He stepped aside, leaving the doorway completely open. He did not reach for me. He waited. So I crossed the threshold myself. I cannot promise this will be easy, he said. Good. Easy makes me suspicious. A quiet laugh escaped him. I missed that. You missed being insulted? Apparently. I looked at him and understood that I had never wanted a powerful man to rescue me. I wanted a man powerful enough to respect my freedom. Adrian had once believed strength meant needing no one. I had once believed independence meant needing nothing from anyone. We had both been wrong. Love was not ownership. It was not rescue. It was not surrender. Sometimes it was simply an open door, a patient silence, and two people standing on opposite sides until both were free enough to choose the same direction.